Welcome to Keep Going, a podcast about failure and success, hosted by John Biggs. Every week, we talk to an amazing person about a time they failed and what they learned. And remember, when you're going through hell, keep going.
Welcome back to Keep Going, a podcast about success and failure. I'm John Biggs. Today on the show of Lisa Grelnick. She's the U.S. Managing Director and Global Head of Sustainability and Impact at IF Design, one of my favorite organizations, and the creator and host of The Future of XYZ. So I guess we're just kind of like overlapping, but you're talking about big questions. I think you're talking to smarter people than me, ideally.
I doubt it, John. I doubt it.
Well, it's fairly difficult to find somebody dumber. But ultimately, I want you to tell me what you're working on. Tell me a little bit about IF. I don't think a lot of people know about IF even, but I've been fascinated by it since I've seen it like floating around over, past 30 years, I think now, for me personally.
Well, you're ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
IF Design has been around actually since 1953.
Yeah.
We are a German nonprofit, and we're best known for running the annual IF Design Award. That started in industrial design, and that's still our largest discipline with 25 categories, from automotive and cars to sports gear to babies and toys to interior design elements and building materials and all sorts of cool things. But we also have 7 other disciplines as well as concepts now, including architecture and branding and UX and all sorts of crazy things. But it's a huge design award. And then we also host a social impact prize and a student design award. And we host the podcast Future of XYZ now and other content series. We put out an annual trend report. And most recently, we launched just a few weeks ago, we launched the IF Design Academy, which is an opportunity for us to share with the international design community the knowledge and expertise that we've gleaned over 72 years, but also of the expertise of many of our community who are practitioners who want to teach about personal leadership, future literacy in terms of sustainability, emerging tech, as well as, most importantly, business fundamentals and acumen for designers so that we're more equipped to speak in the boardroom and speak in the C-suite and escalate what we all believe at IF is really important, which is design for the betterment of our collective future.
Mm-hmm. So there's 2 things I wanted to explore there. I think there's a very interesting practical question that I have. Why would somebody want to enter an IF design style competition? I've seen it I think it shows up at CES. I think it shows up doesn't it show up at like IFA or something like that, a couple places?
Yeah, we show up in a lot of places. We've just, coming back to your original question, John, as I say, you're ahead of the curve, even though we've been around for 72 years. If you've heard about it for 30, we actually only have made a concerted effort to be in the North American /US market now for the last 2 years. So I was hired just over 2 years ago at the conclusion of the 70th anniversary 2023 Design Award to really build out and support the US /North American design community, where we haven't had a strong presence. We've had dedicated offices in 4 places in Asia, in Brazil, in Turkey, in the Netherlands, in Italy, in Spain, and of course the headquarters in Germany. We get entries from 70 plus countries every year, but the US is a different and very unique market. And although companies like Apple and Ford and PepsiCo and Lenovo and IBM and a whole bunch of big companies that we all know, as well as smaller design studios participate, the brand isn't that well recognized. And one of the reasons that we are really excited about bringing it to the US in a more meaningful way is because we are truly the largest independent design award in the world by virtue, although it is a pay to enter and pay a fee for all the usage rights and things of logos. If you win, there is also this international platform that you provide. We have 11,000 entries every year, as I mentioned, from about 70 countries. So it is an enormous award. It is a very transparent process. Certain sections. It is a 2-stage jurying process, and we have 135 international jurors, the likes of the global design officer at Mattel in kids, right? And the likes of the head of the International Interior Design Association in interior architecture, the head of UX for Samsung in UX. Like, these are very, very prominent people who do a 2-step juring process. And so you're getting objective feedback, and you get feedback in 5 key criteria, which is idea, form, function, differentiation, and now sustainability as of last year, which I'm very proud of. So 20% of your score is on the social and environmental impact side of your design. And so people want to apply because you get global recognition. People want to apply because you get objective and critical feedback from peers and experts. And then, of course, there's all the marketing that comes along with it, and the recognition and the party and the celebrations and the statuettes and all of those good things as well.
Okay. So, I mean, I think that's part of my question, because I think a lot of people who are building something and trying to, especially hardware. I mean, hardware is almost impossible, but those folks are getting inundated on a regular basis with, hey, join us to do this juried selection thing and to pay $2,000. We don't know what you get. And what it sounds like is that IF is one of the rare companies that's going to give you like that full feedback, or do you think that's generally what's supposed to happen?
My understanding is that it doesn't happen anywhere else. And it's actually, if you don't make it past the preliminary jury, you still get feedback. And if you make it to the second jury, you get a second round of feedback. And it's a crit chart that shows how you scaled within the jury group who juried you on each of these 5 criteria: individual scores, total cumulative scores, and then how you compare in your category. So if you're in, digital interface, how you compare against the other digital interface category entrants and over the total. So even if you don't win, you actually are getting that critical feedback. So it's not personalized, we think this, but it's getting your scores on that total scale, which I don't know anyone else is doing, and really tries to keep things extremely objective.
Yeah, that sounds useful. Tell me a little bit about growing a brand it's not invisible per se, but as we've discussed, it is kind of invisible. It's hard for people haven't heard of it. How did you grow that brand from essentially fumes, I suppose?
It still feels sometimes like it's fumes. I mean, it's a very timely question, John, because at 2 years and change, we have a lot of learnings. I mean, I think that the value proposition fundamentally is resonant. We are a design institution. The IF Design Foundation is focused on design research and education at the highest, loftiest levels. If you look at our symposiums and our publications, it is really like, how does design make the world better? And it is really academic. And we've filtered that kind of academic prowess into our trend report, for instance, which is a 300-page digital interface that anyone can download. It's now in the paywall stage, but usually we have a period of 3 months where it's free for download. And it's really rigorous research. It's based on 11,000 entries. It's based on interviews with experts. It's based on this. We carry that through everything. The Student Award, this is Social Impact Prize. We give 150,000 euros of prize money. It's based on UN SDGs, all of these kinds of things. I think that there is a strong value proposition that people want to align to once they find out about it. They're like, oh, that's different, right? That's different. I think that the other piece of it, of course, is, it's hard to grow brand. We're a nonprofit. My joke has always been, like I had bigger budgets when I was an intern 30 years ago, as far as marketing. We don't have huge dollars per se, but we have a compelling story. And so you're trading a lot in how can we afford paid media? Because that's the game. How do we get earned appearances like this, and earned coverage, which has been much more challenging because a lot of publications run their own awards and they're very lucrative. And then how also, I think most importantly, do we continue to honor our commitment to being an active and respected member of the international design community? And so that's what I've leaned in on, is the community aspect. Yes, we have like the classical marketing funnel where you have to have awareness, but how do we build awareness? And part of that is we have incredible people in our network already who are jurors. We've gone from 3 US-based jurors to 11. Again, very prominent people, but also we're growing our participation. What are the winner stories? We're bringing a bunch of now lecturers and instructors on the academy, content stories, all of these kinds of aspects. So how do we help them to tell the story as well? But it's slow burn. I won't lie. It's not an overnight success model, but we're seeing solid growth, and I'm really excited because when people get involved, they come to understand, and then they want to be more.
Was there ever a situation where you basically somebody paid their way through, and it turns out that they submitted like a real dog? What happens there?
So
dogs are nice too, so that's not a bad deal. But
dogs are nice, but no. So what we have more often, every now and again. So for a long time, the Chinese government had been underwriting if people won. right? Like they would then get an award from the Chinese government, and the Chinese government then, for instance, that was a way of boosting creativity and innovation within China, because we've had a presence in both Taiwan and mainland China for the last 20, 25 years. So we have a very, very strong brand reputation, and has been linked, the government wants innovation and growth. And that, of course, incentivizes people. It's a very low bar to entry then. And so that has been something we've actively been managing. And part of, kind of investing in the US market is also to counterbalance and say, like, you have to build a base of really excellent design. And what we also did to respond to what was happening, and I don't mean just out of the Chinese market in any way, shape, or form. That's just one example. But in general, if the bar to entry seems low to people, or they think that they can win and they don't understand, how do you instigate for the jurors as well, who are, getting paid a stipend, but these are professionals and it's a lot of work. So we put in a second stage, which is a preliminary online jury. All 100% of entries, 11,000 entries, go to the preliminary jury online over the course of 4 days, and then the top 50% overall, not by category, not by region, not by anything. Top 50% of scores overall move to a final jury, which is in person over the course of 2.5 days in Germany. Mm-hmm. And we bring the jurors together and they discuss and touch and feel and all the things. That really actually ruled out the possibility that, like, quote unquote dogs, mm-hmm. are seen. And people have the choice. Some people have a dog and they think that it's, like the most beautiful thing ever. And that's their prerogative. And they get that feedback, from the jurors. They see how they scored against other projects. So hopefully it's objective and critical for them.
How do you maintain that level of, that high level of maintenance to a specific cause, right? So it seems like in a lot of these organizations, you've been around since the 50s, obviously, a lot of these organizations kind of lose their way. A lot of organizations, especially in post-millennial times, literally in the millennial generation, have lost their focus and their benefit. USAID is like a good example of that. It helps a million people around the world, but it's also seen as a dinosaur for absolute worst. How do you maintain that level of focus in a culture and a globe that's kind of like losing that sense of perfection?
I love the question and I hate the question, John. Mm-hmm. I hate the question that you have to ask it and it makes sense. That makes me super sad for our world right now. And it's true. It makes me happy to answer because I think the answer is something that I've been doing for my entire career, which is now almost 30 years, which is values. How do you define your values, and how do you have a values-driven leadership model and a values-driven brand, and honoring that, not just as words, but truly deeply. And it's one of the reasons I joined IF. I mean, I'd been running my own strategy consultancy for almost 7 years by the time that IF approached me. I had never heard of IF Design, and I wasn't particularly interested. And as I got to know the organization, I came to understand how deeply aligned our value system was, but also what the values of impact, excellence, and design mean for the global broader community. And so I think we haven't lost our way because we've continued to stay very close to the designers, number one, and that's who we serve, right? Number two is the higher purpose of kind of impact and excellence in design as serving the world, both the planet and people, and making it better. And by believing that kind of innovation story, I think that we've always kind of stayed true to the mission. And then the third piece of it, of course, is, we had a CEO who'd been there for about 27 years, and he stepped down 3.5-4 years ago. We have a new CEO, and that CEO initiated a digital transformation, if you will, and real investment in looking at both our website and back end, which now has 72 years of indexed winners. So it's a mm-hmm. great design resource in addition to everything else, looking at content, building an app, but more importantly was actually like the application process and the jury tool. So we actually now have an opportunity. In some cases, we co-brand with like the Taipei Bicycle, for instance. Big design awards in the world sometimes use our technology that we've built because it's very rigorous and because we've invested in making sure that it serves our applicants, but also our jurors, which is in betterment for the entire design community. So I think that it's been a very lucky thing. And also, I mean, being a nonprofit and a small nonprofit is helpful as well.
Okay. So I think that's an interesting point. I mean, if you're to be a values-driven company, you can be a values-driven company when it's 2 people. It's harder when it's 1,000 people, especially when you have shareholders, et cetera. I guess Ben and Jerry's pulled it off for all intents and purposes, but I can't think of anybody else. Yeah, I can't think of anybody else at the moment. Patagonia.
Right. But they never sold, but they put it into a purpose trust. So that's the biggest level of it.
What does that kind of leadership look like? I mean, I can imagine the day-to-day of leadership is don't spend money on that. But in this case, leadership is like, hey, yeah, we have to do these events. We have to bring in we have to do this educational stuff. We have to bring in more designers. I mean, you also have to maintain the value of design given AI right now.
Yes.
You're talking like I was tasked 6 months ago with making chairs by a famous Hungarian designer. I forget what his name was. Croatian designer. And I was supposed to make chairs in his style. And I was able to pretty much do that in about, I can't even remember the dude's name. And I was able to do it in about 40 minutes and have like a 3D model that we could print on a 3D printer for an event. As we lose that appreciation for aesthetic in that way, how do we fix that? How do we maintain?
I mean, it's an important question and one that we're really trying to tackle. It's partially how we ended up into this conversation of launching the Academy. Mm-hmm. I mean, I want to be able to answer your question directly, but I'm going to put my own personal spin on the answer, which is, in my opinion, hold on one second. My opinion on that is kind of multifold in terms of what matters. I think that designers have done a very poor job of understanding the broader impact of design in the business context. I have a degree, an MBA, from an international business school. And I spent my beginning of my career in fashion. I always have been at that kind of intersection of design and business. And I think that designers have done a terrible job of educating themselves on the language of business and profit margin and impact in that business context. And so that's really one of the things. And I think it's done a disservice to design, even in the height of like kind of the millennial, if you will, of design thinking and the ideas of the world and the frog designs of the world being like really, really prominent and very well respected and known, everyone wanting design thinking. In the end, it wasn't speaking about business. It was about Post-it notes. I mean, when you talk about design thinking, people think about these walls of colored Post-it notes. Like that is not what design thinking is about. It's a strategic approach and framework, right, to solving problems and finding solutions. And that is actually all design ever is you giving constraints, which is amazing because that's all our world has today, are constraints. And you're finding solutions that are creative, new, proven solutions. I mean, those words feel like they don't belong together, but that's what design does, right? And so I think that, that's really for me, one of the main opportunities that the Academy came to recognize is we need to bring leadership skills and support to design leaders. We need to give them skills to look ahead towards the future in a different way and educate them on AI and emerging tech and sustainability and tactical ways, right? Not strategic ways. And then let's talk business fundamentals. Like, how do you sit in a boardroom? How do you present, if you're not already doing it, to your CEO when your finance director, as I've experienced, and I'm sure you have a million times over, is hammering you for something and you're like, well, but this is so pretty and it has to be this way because it's great. It's like, that is not the answer anymore. You have to be able to pivot. And I think almost every designer knows that, but they don't necessarily know where to go. It's left and right brain. And I think we really want to make sure that we can be an asset, and we're not the only one, but how do we support great design going forward? And part of it is, merging it with the language of business and sustainability and tech.
Okay, I want folks to go over to ifdesign.com. You currently have like a way to like search for every single thing that's one.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, absolutely. You can actually, on the website, you can just visit, as you said, John, ifdesign.com. And at the top, it says winners in IF ranking. And you can see all winners since 1954. It's the second drop down. And you can filter and you can search and you can look, or you can look at last year's winners. You can look at highlights. It's all there.
There's going to be Braun, Leica, there's going to be, I don't know, all kinds of stuff on there. All this
Ron,
beautiful
for
stuff.
sure. I mean, Dieter Rams was actually given the first Lifetime Achievement Award that we gave out 2 years ago. He made his final public appearance on stage in Berlin at our award night. And he was one of the original jurors for many, many years. And it was an honor to meet him, but also his words to the audience of 2,400 attendees was, as designers, we have the responsibility to make the world better still. And I think that's aligns to our mission. And I think that's what designers generally have always historically felt their role is.
Well, that's lovely. I hope somebody who's listening has been making a thing and has been on the fence about pitching it to you all because and actually decides to do it because, like I said, I've been going to the events wherever they've been. I definitely remember them in Europe.
For sure.
For as long as I remember. Big fan.
Thank you, John. Yeah.
All right. Well, Lisa, thank you for joining us. It's been fascinating.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
This is Keep Going, a podcast about success and failure. I'm John Biggs. We'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to Keep Going, a podcast about success and failure. Remember, Keep Going is entirely listener supported. If you're listening to this, please head over to keepgoingpod.com, where you can subscribe to the podcast for as little as $5 a month. This is a labor of love, and every little bit helps. Thanks for listening.